Welcome. Welcome to the Dave Show Midstream Reading Series. My name is Richard Terrill. We want to thank Unitarian, as always, for giving us this great space. Thank you. And I also want you to know that we have a website, which is midstreamreadingseries.wordpress.com, where you can find video recordings of all the readings for the last, couple of years? Yeah, and a list of everybody who's ever read here. And of course, the announcements for coming events. Up here, this sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I like, this voice of God thing.
Yeah.
And so if the poets just, pedal to the metal, and if anywhere if you can't hear anytime, I've sat in the back sometimes where it was hard to hear. So if it's too, not loud enough, just politely raise a hand and we will adjust. I'll crank it up to 11 if I have to.
11.
It's the Spinal Tap thing.
Spinal Tap.
Yeah. We also have a mailing list, so I'll pass around this tablet and a pen, and if you're not already on our mailing list, we will put you on it. We don't bug you, you'll just get 2 emails a month announcing the next month's event. We don't sell anything, so we don't give out the addresses otherwise. So if you're not on the list, probably most of you are. We have books for sale, lots of books. Wow, that's really a nice spread. It's a buffet. So afterwards, I'm sure the poets will be happy to sign books and chat with you. And second only in importance to having books for sale, the bathrooms are down the hall and to the right. Okay. Just going to read one poem. It's a little long, so just one. And it's an imagined in the words of Maurice Ravel. And the title is Pavane for a Dead Princess, which of course is one of his famous works. And and in the middle of it, in a couple of places, it shifts to the third person, and I'll do this, but you don't even really need to know that. And the epigraph is something that Ravel actually said, Pavane for a Dead Princess. That title has nothing to do with the composition. I simply like the sound of those words. Pavane for a Dead Princess. I dream I'm asleep at the window. The dream has nothing to do with my life, less remarkable than most. The dream has nothing to do with a princess, one more woman I will never know. I simply have somewhere to go, back to my desk. So I wake. The dream? I've already forgotten. The window? Late evening has fallen like a descending line, modal, closely scored, and the features of the countryside are lost. The sky here is suspended over the fields, strange to me, a city dweller, and it never resolves, never makes the step down to harmony. The man at the window may be Maurice Ravel. Note the prominent brow and the sweep of gray as if he's facing into the wind, as if music merely occurs to him, descending on a cloud of reason and order. He's looking out from his fragile city life on the contrasting pears in the meadow, the stout partridge, the slender cypress, the night sky away from the city, the uneven brick in the street of imagination where it intersects with ordinary resolve. A cup of warm tea, a cup of warm water, a cup of weak tea, a cold supper, fish on a plate. An evening out with friends? Maybe next week. The unremarkable life leaves only work, and work leaves little time for remark. Note the Dorian character of moonlight. Listen for the owl in the woodlot, the resolution in its call. Sadness is the highest tone of beauty, I've thought. It never resolves in a cadence like contentment over the fields. It resides in the deep strings, more perfect than pond life, more mirror than cathedral sky, never makes the step down to harmony. Music is a correction to the errors in nature. Yet art too is a beautiful lie, the unscolded child who learns to charm his governess. Or the street dweller looking in from the cold, imagining night on a soft bed, morning on a sturdy chair, fresh sheets, autumn clouds in sun, all beyond reach. Balance, though, is white shaded by not too much blue. Balance is fruit on a plate, wine in a glass, the table covered in a floral cloth. So it is. I chose to pull the chair away from the window. Nothing to do with what I could see or not see there. I chose not to resolve the dominant chord in quite the way you expected. I simply liked that arrangement of sounds. The man at the window is Maurice Ravel. Joyce Sutphen grew up on a farm in Stearns County, Minnesota. Most of you probably know that. Her first book of poetry, Straight Outta View, won the Barnard New Women's Poets Prize. Her second book of poems, Coming Back to the Body, from Holy Cow Press in 2000, was a finalist for the Minnesota Book Award, and her third book, Naming the Stars, won the Minnesota Book Award in poetry. Her recent books are Carrying Water to the Field, New and Selected Poems, This Long Winter, and That Other Life, just last year. She served as the Minnesota Poet Laureate from 2011 to 2021, succeeding Robert Bly. And she is Professor Emerita of Literature and Creative Writing at Gustavus Adolphus College. Joyce Sutphen.
Hi everybody. It's nice to be here, and I don't have any opening words right now, but it's August 8th, right? Yeah. And so it made me think of reading a really old poem for you to you. Something happened on this day. I'm going to tell about it in my poem, but one sad thing about it was that it sort of impinged upon my birthday, that was going to happen 2 days after that. And so, I'm just going to read the poem, okay? And then I'll settle down and say hello. When I was 5, my father, who loved me, ran me over with a medium-sized tractor. I was lucky, though. I tripped and slipped into a small depression, which caused the wheels to tread lightly on my leg, which had already been broken when I was 3 by a big dog who liked to play rough. And when I was 8, I fell from the second floor balcony onto the cement by the back steps. And as I went down, I saw my life go by and thought, this is the way Wile E. Coyote feels every time. Luckily, I landed mostly on my feet. And only had to go on crutches for a few months in the 5th grade. And shortly after that, my father, against his better judgment, bought the horse I'd wanted for so long. All the rest of my luck has to do with highways and ice, things that could have happened but didn't. Phew. There. You know, sometimes you just want to do something over, and I would like to do that over, but I'm not going to. Well, hi everybody. Okay. I'm going to read from a variety of things. I'm going to read from the last book that I haven't read from very much at all. I'm just going to read a few poems from that, and then some in-betweeners, and then the first poem in my next book, which is coming out this fall, I think, and it goes back to the farm one more time, maybe. We'll see. So, in that other life, it's most of the poems are sonnet shaped, and maybe not traditional sonnet, but 14 lines, and something happens, something is resolved, something is discovered, and they're mostly narrative, but the very first one is sort of a lyric on what I was trying to do, and I wanted to read it, especially because I was thinking about it, and I thought of a couple concepts for us, people who are kind of maybe were around for this 1960s or a little bit in that era. Time ship. We share a time ship, like friendship, time ship. And then age identity, it became, I thought about that. They say that you're closer to the people that lived in your year, when did you graduate from high school, than you are sometimes to your own siblings. And when you have 9 kids in the family and you're the oldest, I am, some of my younger siblings just don't seem to know their music, and they're just a little bit off, So anyway, here's that, and I'm gonna take. I brought some water, but I didn't.
Want that one? Or this one?
I don't know why I'm nervous. I love all of you, and I'm not having any difficulties otherwise, which I could. So I should just be thankful and settle down. In a brief segment, we existed. We lived in places with addresses that always changed. We rearranged our rooms, we exchanged rings and other things. For a short while we believed. We witnessed a leaf and pronounced it green. The air was blue when it turned to sky. Why shouldn't the moon be cut in pieces? Even to say it was brief is to say too much as I want to claim more, and segment signals a lingering longer than I meant. For a moment we existed, and afterwards the world was always briefly ours. So, reading Blake in 1968, and there's behind this poem is probably the poem by John Berryman called A Professor's Song, which begins, rabbit and dog dull, let me tell you how the 18th century couplet ended, now you tell me. Troll me, and it's has some funny bits in that are echoed in here. But this was my experience being introduced to romantic poetry. Blake came first, so reading Blake in 1968, he put his long fingers, Ichabod Crane, I thought to myself, together and looked at us. It was 1968, early January, and the radiators, well, what? Were clanking in the upper hell of Lind. Did it sing like a nightingale? Hall. Fingertips touching, tip to tip, he answered a question we hadn't asked and said, no, Blake wasn't mad. Blake wasn't mad at all. in a way that indicated he was, which is why we all wanted to see a world in a grain of sand, and why that summer everyone was saying, "Ah, sunflower." So then the book kind of goes on the road for a while and is up in the mountains in Colorado and picking apples in Washington State, and then back to Minnesota, but really to New Jersey, where the intention was to stay a couple days, and we stayed 4 years. But and here's some things I learned from my mother-in-law, who was the exact opposite of my mom. And so for everything on this list, there would be an opposite list from my own family. Things I learned from my mother-in-law. Grocery shop every day. Shop like a Parisian. Get your baguette in the morning, consult the butcher in the afternoon, have a glass of sherry every night. Never take sides, simply listen and withhold judgment. Later, when she loves him again, she won't have to remember that you told her to kick the bum out. When criticized, affect a weary or confused expression, as if the matter under fire is only vaguely familiar. Pretend you are listening. Pretend you are listening now. Open a secret checking account. Let's see. You know, I think my problem here is I'm reading, I feel like I'm looking down and I don't have the paper in the right exact place. But it's okay. Oh,
It's okay.
so there's a section that refers to kind of classic English literature types, and this one's called the Wordsworth effect. It's kind of like the lake effect, you know, or what other effects are there? The Wordsworth effect is when you return to a place and it's not nearly as amazing as you once thought it was. Or when you remember how you felt about someone or something, but you know you'll never feel that way again. It's when you notice someone has turned down the volume and you realize it was you. And when you have the suspicion that you've met the enemy and you are it, or you get your best ideas from your sister's journal. It's also, to be fair, the thing that enables you to walk for miles and miles, chanting to yourself in iambic pentameter, and to travel through Europe with only a clean shirt, a change of underwear, a notebook, and a pen. And yes, is when you stretch out on your couch and summon up 10,000 daffodils, all dancing in the breeze. It was funny, we looked at that suitcase and a little satchel, and you know, the note said, this is all that Wordsworth carried with him when they went up into the Alps and everything. And Walt was thinking of my suitcase and how much stuff was in there and how heavy it was. Here's just one more of those. Berryman's hands. Watching him, that is John Berryman, On YouTube, he recites self-consciously, overdoing it, life, friends, is boring. And then comments on Anna Karenina and how he made Henry part tragedy, part disaster, with some humor but highly exaggerated. I noticed his white and slender hands, how tapered and long his fingers are as he smooths his mustache and rubs his beard, saying words as if by heart from behind his horn-rimmed glasses. Once I saw him leaving Walter Library, cutting across the mall, on his way to give a lecture in Ford Hall. I should have dropped everything and followed him to hear that great poet talk about Stephen Crane, that great poet, or Mistress Bradstreet, or the Bard. But he was talking to himself, pausing as if he heard another voice, which he did, and I, that day, did not. Okay, I might as well do this one. I think I can get through it. It's a sonnet. It has a limited vocabulary, and I'll see if I can read it. It's called What I Did Not Know. Could feel the, finish that. What I did not know. What I did not know, I did not have. Nope, okay. What I did not know. What I did not know I did not have is what I was looking for, even when I did not know what it was I did and did not have. What I did not have, I would never have known if I had not had a heart that had to have it. And having it, my heart knew what it hadn't had before, and had no heart to go back to what it once had had. What heart I had, I did not know, but now what I did not have was not what I did not know. No. Now what I did not know was what my heart would do now, that it had what it did not know it was looking for, now that it knew what it was it did not know. I could try to do it really fast. What I did not know I did not have is what I was looking for, even when I did not know what I did not have. What I did not have, I would have never have known if I had not had a heart that had to have it. And having it, my heart knew what it hadn't had before and had no heart to go back to what it once had had. What heart I had, I did not know, but now what I did not have was not what I did not know. No. Now what I did not know was what my heart would do now that it had what it did not know it was looking for, now that it knew what it did not know. I think I should put copies out and see who can say it in the fastest amount of time. And it could be a very Lilliputian, small Olympic event. Okay, so I'm going to just read a couple newer poems, and the first poem to my next book. Water skiing. This one took me a long time to get it just the way I wanted it, and I think it's there. Water skiing. It took many days of trying, many days of failing better. But at last I learned how to climb out of the water onto the smooth back of the lake, where I could swim back and forth across the middle of a wake that spread like a fan behind my uncle's speedboat. I wanted to write my name in the middle of that lake as proof that I had walked on water. I wanted to lean so far out that I would shimmer with phosphorescence before I broke into something like the rain. And this one's a little bit older, but it's kind of was with the rhythms that I was thinking when I was picking poems for today. Say the word. Choices we have made or refused, ways we might have taken once, times we would not wait or times we waited much too long, roads we could not follow and those ones we never found, all those roads that led to nowhere, all those hopes that led to nothing. Every one of them is sacred, something you can call your own. Everything you lose, you'll find again. If it's worth the trouble, it'll be there. You can begin again, start all over, anytime. You just need to say the word. And how am I doing?
One more minute.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was at. So this is just like a little preamble to the poems, which are going to be a lot like the poems in first words and afterwards. And this one's going to be called Homewards. Little pun in there, I like that in a title. I actually didn't know that Straight Out of View, when I named that book, could also be I Love You, or wait, straight out of you, straight out of you, and straight out of view. That's not surprising because I love Shakespeare, and Shakespeare is very punny. So, American Gothic, you know the painting, right? So just keep that in mind. And American Gothic. The epigraph is Louise Blick. We look at the world once in childhood. The rest is memory. At least once they paused, at least once they posed for a photograph in that American Gothic style. Mother looking to the left, father straight ahead, but they never were those kind of people. They wanted their dog, a big blonde doggy sort of creature, in the picture with them. And somehow, in the attempt to arrange themselves, they lost their balance and they all tumbled down, laughing and barking at the same time, unhurt. I took that picture and then another. It was the same day as the one on the cover of this book, but the sky was bluer, the grass greener. Everything was more itself than here in the half-light that makes a memory. You, dear reader, will never know a place like that one, but I tried to get something of it in these poems. Things change, everything changes. It took a while to learn that and what comes after that too.
Joyce Sutphen. Dylan Loring is a poet from Des Moines, Iowa, and an assistant professor of English at the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Barron County. His poems have appeared in New Ohio Review, Jubilat, Ninth Letter, The Laurel Review, and Forklift, Ohio. Along with his friends Kate McClam and Jordan Devereaux, he edits the magazine Lost Pilots. Dylan's first book of poems, This Smile is Starting to Hurt, from Southeast Missouri, press is out now. Dylan Loring.
I think this is as high as it goes. Thanks, Joyce. Thanks, Dick. So I'm Dylan. These are poems. I didn't know who you were talking about in your poem today, so there might be some people you don't know in this one, too. My name is Poetica, Ars Poetica. My acting dream is simple. I want to be the guy who hands Idris Elba's James Bond all of the cool gadgets, and I want to be given a lot of room for improvisation. Think Carrot Top meets a coked up Billy Mays. I will maintain equal parts seriousness and enthusiasm as I gift Bond his accordion with the secret compartment for weed that also has a secret compartment behind the secret compartment for weed for a shoe phone. I will place Bond's cyanide tablets in the middle of one of those pyramid scheme tubs of protein powder. His wire, a perfect moment of my character's pop culture self-awareness, will be hidden in a hit clips loaded with a tiny cartridge of Oops, I Did It Again. I will save the gun that's actually a knife in disguise for the finishing touch. Audiences will laugh at my role until they realize just how little the bad guys are expecting the Zooey Deschanel sensibility of these gadgets. E.g., the heavily stereotyped Russian villain with the eye patch and cane will take the bullets out of Bond's gun knife, but Bond will then stab the heavily stereotyped villain with the eye patch and cane with the gun knife, ergo fulfilling the weapon's true intent. The lackeys who confiscate the protein powder will accidentally ingest the cyanide tablets and be killed off-screen sometime after the events of the movie. The accordion / wheat storage / shoe phone's 5G signals will give the entire syndicate testicular or ovarian cancer. My character will be the first gadget scientist in the history of James Bond to make the vintage BMW Z3 Roadster a reward for after the mission is completed successfully. That way I will inject political commentary on 21st century capitalism into the franchise, adding an extra layer of nuance to the portrayal. My character will be so insufferable that he will be fuzzy handcuffed by a famous British actor or actress, a Sir this or a Dame that, to a smart car in the closing scene of the film, which is really good for me since redacted has been my not-so-secret mission all along. Trapped in a room with a bottle, sorry, this one's a long title. Trapped in a room with an unsolved math problem, a bottle of sewer water, a third of a Cliff Bar, and a terrible poem premise. Not even MacGyver could Rube Goldberg machine his way out of this one, and so I just keep circumnavigating back to square one. I have the sheet and scissors, but my ghost keeps failing to levitate, to distinguish itself from my regular bedding, leaving it perpetually bunking with me tonight. I'm certain that this is the kind of shit that Van Gogh was working through when he cut off his ear in his search for the elusive mellow that follows melodrama. It's not the worst idea, really, an insurance policy that puts your money where your ear isn't, so that when the muse speaks, the message goes in one ear but never out the other. Knowing my luck, though, my muse would cut off its tongue in solidarity. You're on your own, bub, it will not say. This one I started making fun of someone else's poetic style, which is probably not something you're supposed to do, but oh well. We find ourselves gathered around a stranger with a massive stack of ones at a bowling alley claw machine. On the verge or precipice, we think or hope, tongues swallowed, hands held, assembled in coven-like semicircle, stranger's hood at full mast to impede peripheral vision. Our collective silence expedites the rate at which our questions are answered. The stranger no claw machine ringer, only apparent ability, considerable inebriation. As the pile of cash dissipates, we sneak our own bills in, refill the stranger's beer. We're committed to the stranger winning or passing out trying, to this oddly specific iteration of the American dream. There's a fight. Me versus great art. I often feel incapable of making great art because boring things bore me. I often hear great art address me from across the jail yard fence. Great art is gonna bail me out with some loophole in a law book. All I have to do is lift weights and wait. Ha. Great art is so sure of itself. Great art refuses my offer of a conjugal visit, strongly disagrees with my plan to scale the barbed wire, serpentine at the spotlight's approach. My subsequent plan involves using great art as a distraction. Great art feels I'm missing the point. It is they who will miss the point, I tell great art. Keep on talking, great art, I say, as great art calls me derivative. I'm digging the hole behind my poster with a plastic spork and a sharpened bar of soap. I expect to be placed alone in a white-walled room within a couple of hours. I traded my mashed potatoes the other day for the blue crayon nub I've hidden in my ear hole. This one's called Apples to Oranges. If you aren't a little afraid of popping the champagne, there is no hope for you, someone who pays perfectly good money to get thrown out of an airplane with another person on your back. Or maybe I just have the luck of a man whose parachute would break and whose backup parachute would break. Perhaps you are a superior being and not someone who would get lost on Lake Superior, searching for only rumored about on the History Channel gold, which is at least proof that even I sometimes have moments of whimsy, however flimsy. I love this one. No magazine ever took it. Oh well. We got so good at printing money that we started printing more printers with the intention of printing even more money with the copied printers, but then all the abstraction found its groove inside the warehouse's concrete walls. By the time we got around to printing ink, we were so busy unjamming printers and copies of printers that we hired an ink guy and an unjammer associate. We no longer had time to find a wholesale attaché case hookup, or market our wares on the dark web, or speak with our mothers on the phone. None of us can remember what we did before printing, and the thought of doing something after printing was completely ludicrous. And when the landlord finally entered, wondering why our rent was late, it only took her one glance to join in the festivities. I think I wrote this one when Dick was my thesis advisor.
Uh-oh.
I know. I think the ending's new. When she came over for this, oh, and actually, I this was also a bet with Kate, who's in the back, and Jesse Zucker. We were trying to all use the words boxed wine and cube cheese in a poem, and so mine somehow became a keeper. I don't know why or how. When she came over for the second time, she noticed a couple of old Schwinns along the back fence that had probably been there for 20 years. We rode along with few words and rusty squeals, dust rubbing into our crotches on the left side of the has-been highway. We rode fast, me pretending that keeping up wasn't physically exhausted, trying to forget the boxed wine and cube cheese, knees jabbing my stomach at each rotation of the bicycle's version of a clock, something that could be slowed down or sped up for a night like this. She made her bike look like a meticulously chosen movie prop, biking with no hands as she tied her hair back. And she noticed me staring at her, so she stuck her tongue out and squinted, crunching down her chin. So there we were, whipping by fields of soybeans, making stupid faces at each other, only to turn onto a gravel road where it was fields of corn, but the same stupid faces. And don't try to tell me you would have felt the crash coming. Don't dare reduce us by pointing toward our off-page ending. Nah. Despite radically asynchronous work schedules and fetishes, the plastic flamingo and garden gnome met in the moldy basement closet to kick off what would go down in the popular tabloid Better Homes and Gardens as a torrid January to March romance, the two having been introduced by their mutual acquaintance, the third wise man in the nativity scene, who, it must be noted, was known for throwing parties of biblical proportions, during which participants would often raise the roofs of their storage containers or fall out of their garbage sacks, resulting in bent limbs and bum lights, but also the opportunity to be reassigned to a different crowd of decor after the humans put on a show of cursing, and in this particular case, brought the flamingo and gnome together in a tangle of Christmas tree tinsel, where beak and height, beard and hat were no match for the pile of intimacy, the days spent cuddling in an animate joy that probably would have lasted had a second flamingo not been gifted to the humans, had the humans not decided to be practical for once in their lives and consolidate the two flamingos into one flamingo bag. And after all, what's easier to love than a newer, cleaner version of yourself? I want to read the one about making a blood oath. I've never done this. Don't try this at home, kids. We were going to make a blood oath, but instead of a needle, you used a dagger and started gushing, and I vomited on your mostly severed finger. And you told me I needed to take you to the hospital, but I told you I needed a less smelly shirt because not all of the vomit landed on the finger. And you said if we have to wait anyway, we might as well do the blood oath while you were already bleeding. And so you handed me the dagger, and I intentionally dropped it because at least one of us needed enough blood to drive. And you told me to watch it because the dagger cost $500. So I asked why I paid for your lunch. And you said because it was sweet to do it up until I made that crack. And so I decided to change the subject back to the hospital, but you insisted on doing the blood oath immediately in case you didn't make it. Because even as you passed out from a vampiric wet dream level of blood loss, you were able to argue that it made a better obituary if the blood oath was successful. But I totally disagreed, and so could no longer take the blood oath in good conscience. How am I doing on time, Dick?
One more?
One more? Sounds good.
You're fine.
So, never heard that before, actually.
Well, I was speaking time-wise,
Oh,
not
okay.
about your state of mind.
That one's a lot of pop culture. Oh. I like this one. I don't think anyone else does, so I'm going to end on it. It's a prose poem. I decided to start a secret club, so I came up with a secret password. Like the founder of any secret club, I had to write the secret password in invisible ink. Then I went to the grocery store for some lemon juice, since I needed to be able to reveal the secret password at a moment's notice. When I reached the front of the conveyor belt, I winked at the cashier in hopes they would join my secret club. I didn't say or do anything else out of the ordinary because I knew that a secret club shouldn't be desperate for new members. Otherwise, it would have risked the club's perceived exclusivity. I started to realize I could no longer take action willy-nilly with the responsibility of a secret club on my hands. Later, when I dropped off my baby son at the orphanage, I apologized but held strong emotionally. After all, my secret club was beginning to get too serious and dangerous for a small child. Thank you so much.
That was Dylan Loring. Brian Satrom's poetry collection, Starting Again, was released by Finishing Line Press in 2020. His poetry has appeared in a variety of journals, most recently U City Review and Sugar House Review, where it received a pushcart nomination, and is forthcoming in the anthology The Overturning. Brian's work has also been featured on Verse Daily and Vandal Poem of the Day. After completing his MFA at the University of Maryland, he lived in Madison, Wisconsin, and Los Angeles before settling in Minneapolis. You can find more about him at briansatrom.com. Brian.
Thanks so much, Richard. I really appreciate the invitation. I especially want to thank Richard and Marg and Diane and Paul for keeping the tradition of this series going. It's not something to take for granted that we have each month a place to come together and hear poetry. So thank you. I'm going to read 3 poems from Starting Again, and then I'm going to read a few more poems from some more recent work. In this first poem, I'm going to read the setting is a grocery store. So just imagine yourself in a grocery store, maybe your favorite grocery store, I don't know. The poem is called Sparrow. If this were a pond and she stood still in it, she'd be an egret. But she's all small, calculated moves, her green cashmere sweater, 20-something youth, shoulder-length blonde hair, headed for the free sample of blue corn tortilla chips and guacamole, then clutching a fistful of red, unwashed grapes, one bulging in her cheek. At the self-serve island of the deli section, black plastic tongs in hand, she drops into the hollow of her palm 3 wedges of potato sautéed in rosemary, barely stopping while she flits without basket or cart among shoppers, practiced in this space, hunting up what's to be found along peripheries of vision as if it were fallen seed in the shadows of a tree-lined drive leading to a great estate. Then she's gone, having managed a small meal of it, without purchase or commotion, a glass door shutting behind her like a sleepy eye. A number of the poems in this collection are about not having children. So this is one of those poems, and it's called With Time. I'm the one to hollow the pumpkin and carve a face. The doorbell rings again. You adore the children tonight in their costumes. A warm night. We have no costumes, just the two of us and the space between forming a shape we keep repeating. My turn to go and hand out candy. We finally threw away the photo from the booth that merged our faces, a composite to show what a daughter of ours might look like. She looked freaky, not being real. This isn't yours alone to carry, isn't your failure. We won't let us drift apart, but there's nothing to work on or figure out. With time, you'll say your body doesn't crave being a mother anymore. You can't say it now. Your silence a place into which I don't know how to follow you. My family traveled a lot. We moved around a lot when I was growing up, so I actually didn't have that much time to be in the Boy Scouts. I was in the Cub Scouts, maybe for a couple of years in the Weeblos, and actually this poem doesn't actually have to do with that, but it does take its title from the magazine, the scouting magazine, which is called A Boy's Life, and there used to be mail order things that you could order from the back of Boy's Life. It was under the heading of something like gifts and gimmicks, and there are all kinds of crazy, salacious things. I mean, for a scouting magazine, it was. Anyway, so the poem references that. Boy's Life. Myths and cautionary tales from parents. Children's retelling of them. They're morphing. Don't eat the apple's core. The seed's poisonous. Will grow into a tree inside you, inside your eye. The two boys old enough that what they want to know is how to swear. To order from the back of Boy's Life magazine, X-ray glasses. Already curious about bodies, their smoothness, smells, crevices, ways they're entered, games of pretend to skirt around the edges, or seeing for real what they can do to their skins, colliding with concrete, falling from skateboards and bikes and alleys, testing what they can throw and how far, a letdown compared to the distance in their minds. One has a new BB gun, a lemon on the neighbor's tree within range, when hit giving up a tear, and the dove on a low-hanging wire, its abrupt fall to earth. This time they've gone too far. But why? Nobody saw them. The stupid thing just sat there, waiting to be shot. Already, they're wishing they could piece together what's been broken and put it back the way it was. I'm going to read some of the poems I've been working on more recently, and as I mentioned, my family moved around a lot. We actually lived in England when I was in middle school and a teenager, and so this poem references that. And actually, leaving England, that's the title of the poem, Leaving England. We need seeing off, so they've come. Mainly churchwomen with headscarves over their hair and knotted under their chins, the way my mother does when it drizzles. Come to the airport to wish us well. I'm not thinking about what we have in common as much as of my teenage friends I won't see again. But years later, at the oddest moments, they'll show up again in my mind. These mothers, artists, widows, former soldiers' wives, and refugees with their own stories of leaving. My family, an ongoing improvisation, moving from one of my father's jobs to the next. The belonging, but not. Getting almost used to it. Feeling a step removed. The way you might looking at a landscape from a higher vantage. Or even walking through it, through the middle of a field, mud weighing on your boots, a sheet of rain hanging from the heavens in the distance, like a dialect you feel you know, should recognize, but can't quite place. A sort of naive wisdom, then, to simply go with the waves and well wishes like any ordinary leaving. Nothing that accrues or carries over, just on to the next thing. Get on the plane, greet the flight attendant, and supposedly, this time, we're going home. I have a series of 9 poems. I'm not going to read all 9 of them now. The series is called Toward Memphis, and it is it's about an actual road trip along the Mississippi to Memphis, but it's about a whole bunch of other things. It's about distance, it's about emotional distance, it's about wanting to close the emotional distance, and a whole bunch of other things. I'm just going to read 2 of the poems from the series. This is Toward Memphis 1. A feeling, even when we're sure of ourselves and our direction, of never quite arriving, that there's always a just farther beyond, bridges to the other side of rivers, highways toward hills or the horizon, along the way, barns and old cars fading back into the earth at edges of fields. And that more and more, we're having to relearn, make time for what was a given between us. The place we're headed is simply downriver. Will it change anything, going there? You said, let's go. We can meet up with our friends, connect, and then added, even connect with history while we're there, as if that's something one can do. Chances for road trips don't come like they used to. I don't have the time. People seem farther away. I seem farther, even you. And then this one, the setting is Lake Itasca, Minnesota, which I think you all know is the source of the Mississippi. Toward Memphis 2. Trying to capture the essence of anything rare, or at least what's genuinely novel. In this case, a river's origin, as if that's the answer when absences seem to ring truer than presences, the small mouth or eye or eardrum that is the self needing to be filled, a fear of emptiness, a lot of visual noise, people disturbing the calm of what I'm trying to catch at just the point where still water slips into current, cropping them out with my aim of the lens. People like me with their own cell phones, shifting to get the right angle on a photo and a post. Among the crowd, a high school group, their hoodies and caps with the symbol of the 4 directions, the 4 colors, having fun by the water, a few wading in ankle deep, splashing each other, cold as the water is, taking selfies at the source. You can cross from one side of what will be the river's vastness to the other in a few steps on stepping stones, there just for that. We've walked by a small restoration project of the path. So now and then the hard pounding of air compressor, jackhammer. After reading every word displayed on information kiosks, we learn we've walked 0.3 miles to get here. What else is there to find? How far can we go? Can these waters renew us? And then I'm going to wrap up with this poem is set in L.A., which is almost like a second home for me. A number of my poems are set in L.A. The epigraph is the first line of an Emily Dickinson poem, and that first line is very simply, "A light exists in spring." And the poem is called Chasing Images. Whatever I thought I caught out of the corner of my eye, driving by the other day, I'm back for with a camera, filter, and wide-angle lens. But it's lost, or wasn't there. Maybe something I projected, not clear anymore what first drew me in, or how I found myself here again. Something about the church, cracked stucco, broken concrete steps, probably built in the 20s on a corner of what's now a freeway frontage road. Wasn't near a freeway then. In LA, you can feel alive from just the sunlight, the charge of it, or the purple smear or jacaranda blossoms that fell, decay below delicate branches, or the thrust of bougainvillea tumbling over a fence, even beside small box-shaped homes with windows and doors barred for safety's sake. You might think you're right to go with a hunch, chase after a stray impression, make of it what you will, as if it were there for you. But today, I don't know. This won't be a great photo. A plain, if old church with unremarkable sky, no real cloud action, flat, overbearing shadows, nothing for perspective. Any chance figure or flutter of wings haunting the margins, having since disappeared. Thanks so much.
Mr. Brian Satrom. Unity Church has some expenses in hosting us, so we'd like to give you the opportunity, if you so desire, to show our appreciation to them. And while we're doing that, I'd like to invite you to join us at Sweeney's, which is conveniently a block away. Another great thing about this location is proximity to the bar. It's usually a group of us who go, different people every time, and everyone's invited. And also remind you that there are books for sale over here, and you can chat with the poets afterwards and ask questions and fawn over them, or whatever you think is appropriate. Margaret Hasse is a poet, teacher, and writing mentor, and has been advisor to arts organizations throughout the country, including the Kennedy Center. She's authored 6 full-length collections of poems, a collaborative book with watercolor artist Sharon DeMarc, and a 2022 chapbook of poems about Glacier National Park. With Athena Kildegard, she edited Rock by the Waters, an anthology of poems about motherhood. Belongings, a collection of Hasse's new and selected poems, will be released this fall. For more information, margarethasse.com. Margaret.
Is that close enough to my
Yep.
mouth? Can you hear me clearly? First of all, thank you each for coming to hear us read. I think it's just an honor to have an audience. It's very sweet, and wonder what else you would have been doing tonight other than this. As Adrienne Rich says, what did I have to give up to be here tonight? So, well, she didn't say tonight, but to be here. So Richard, I ditto what Brian said about really, and Marg and Paul, keeping this reading series going. It takes time and effort, and I saw you put money in the cup and pass it around, so we should be paying you. And my fellow poets, you know, I was thinking as each person spoke that poetry has a big embrace.
Yes.
All these different styles of poetry from Joyce and Dylan and Brian, and I mean, I haven't heard spork in a poem ever before I heard your poem. It was joyous to hear that. 2 things are on my mind right now that influenced what I'm going to read tonight. One of them is, like many of you, well, I just feel joyous about the change of weather politically, and I feel really overjoyed. I can't focus very well, but the other thing on my mind is something I need to focus on, which is working on my book of New and Selected. And so because that's on my mind, the book Belonging, I picked 1 poem from each of my full-length books to read to you tonight to kind of represent the books, if you can do that. And because I had my first book published when I was about 30, and the first poem I'll read to you tonight is from Stars Above, Stars Below that I wrote when I was 26, and this was the first poem I wrote that I really felt I had a future in poetry. Even though it's beginning on a sorrowful note, it's a little blue note. So from Stars Above, Stars Below, and the poem is called My Mother's Lullaby. Soon there will be no one to tell me what I was like when I was a little girl. When my mother, smelling of milk and bread, brushes the long robe of my hair and the vine spring roses. We wake in a white bed floating with feather pillows. Morning patterns her face. She curls me in her arms. She is a seashell, white and full of song. And now I come to tuck my little mother into bed. I am too young to be empty-armed, and the weeds in my throat will not let me sing lullabies. Waiting has teeth in it. My mother smiles at me and wraps around herself. I won't see her cry. Her wheat body does not even shake. She will not know how echoes turn barbed, how silent tears are turquoise peacock feathers which tickle, and hyena and me laughs. It's crazy, just crazy. And my mother on her thin shelved bed hears the dogs move restlessly. The clack of their nails on linoleum, she knows they have come for her. She whimpers, and they whimper, and soon there will be no one to know me when I was a little girl. The second book I've written when I was in my 30s, a lot about love affairs and lost love and found love, and this is the shortest poem in that second book that I'm reading to you, some of them are a little bit more goosey. So this is called Giving a Massage, and it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, 7 lines long. And the book is, as I said, called In a Sheep's Eye, Darling, and when it was reviewed by the Star Tribune, they said it was a good book once you got by the smart alecky title. You have another smart alecky title, don't you, too? The smile is, what's the rest of it?
Starting to hurt.
It's starting to hurt, it does start to hurt. Giving a massage. Here the archipelago down your spine. Here the dolphin dip of your lower back. Here the firm reefs of your ribs. Here the coral in your breasts. Here the small shells on your fingertips. Here the shoals near your temples. Here the deep current of your mouth. Milk and Tides was a book that was written 20 years after the love affairs and such book. 20 years later, and those 20 years, what fell into those 20 years was motherhood. And so this is a poem then when I came out with the next book, Milk and Tides. This is one of the milk poems. Milk from chickens. The day my son declared with a hammerhead certainty that milk comes from chickens was the day I yanked him out of the city and drove west to farm and prairie land. Like a nail pried from hard wood, he complained from the back seat, missing electronic games and TV. Near the South Dakota border, he saluted a McDonald's as we flew by. I wanted my boy to take a turn lifting barbed wire, to slip into open fields, keeping an eye out for the crazy bull. I wanted him to hold a bottle for a lamb, to feel the fierceness of animal hunger, the suck of an animal's mouth. I wanted him to sleep in darkness encoded with urgent messages of fireflies, to see the bright planets in alignment overhead, to stand on the graves of his grandparents dead so many years before he was born, and to trace the names etched on granite pillows, hard as the last sleep. How else to plant in him the long root of plains grass, help him reach water in drought, and know who his family is. Then we turn to Earth's Appetite as the next book, maybe another 10 years later. Takes a while, those of you who are poets, if we're lucky enough to get published, even in a magazine, it can be 2 years before it comes out, a poem can come out. So this is called Truant, and I know it's kind of an old chestnut because I read it a lot, but I hope you like it and find it funny or light or appealing. I hope you find it appealing. It's called Truant. Our high school principal wagged his finger over 2 manila folders lying on his desk, labeled with our names, my boyfriend and me, called to his office for skipping school. The day before, we ditched Latin and world history to chase shadows of clouds on a motorcycle. We roared down rolling asphalt roads through the Missouri river bottoms beyond town, our heads emptied of reviewed tests and future plans. We stopped in a dirt lane to hear a meadowlark's liquid song, smell heartbreak blossom of wild plum. Beyond leaning fence posts and barbed wire, a tractor drew straight lines across the field, unfurling its cape of blackbirds. Now, 40 years after that geography lesson in spring, I remember the principal's words, how right he was in saying, this will be part of your permanent record. Remember that? How horrified we were, the permanent record out there that exists. In a way, we hope poetry is part of both the permanent and not impermanent record. So the next book was Between Us, and Joyce was very kind to write a blurb on the back, and Connie's sitting in the front row. My friends here, so many of you who are poets or who support poets, married to poets, poets yourselves. This is a little poem called Between Us. This is a little poem called Why to Go to the Wilderness in Between Us. The book is Between Us. The poem is Why Go to the Wilderness. When we walk, silence walks with us. Rope like roots of trees rig the rocky soil, might trip a woman, might roll a man with his backpack like a beetle. The vocabulary of wilderness takes a long time to learn, takes a long time to learn. In the dark, the sickle moon looks left across the universe, which means it will grow. We sleep like pupas in our down bags, and all night the river pours its heart out over the rocks. And the next book is called Summoned, and it took its title from the handmade sign at the George Floyd Memorial that went like this: all mothers were summoned when George Floyd called out for his. I'm gonna ask my husband, I've got a few, I've got a timer in the second row here, so helping me make sure. So I have 3 poems remaining. This one is the longest of the poems I'm going to read. It's a form called a high bun that is first a prose piece. So there's a hunk of prose here, and then they always end, well, that I know of, they always end with a little haiku. So this is called, the book is called Summoned, and the poem is called Behold December. To be held, the minister said, we must behold. To be held, the minister says, we must behold. Tonight I behold a fringe of frost on the windows where candlelight stutters. Although weary, I drive through the dim evening to visit a friend who has fallen on ice. I behold the winter's dark coming and the fear of being brittle-boned and alone. On my friend's kitchen counter squat numerous glass bottles and jars, containers, she tells me, from cleaning out her fridge. Items past their expiration dates. I hope we last past our shelf life, I joke, and we laugh. With no garbage disposal and no dishwasher, my friend lacks the equipment to make it easy to scrub out the contents and ready the glass to recycle. Perhaps it was the kindness called for at church, or what I know as my attachment to order, that prompts me to swoop up a bag of her half-filled bottles and jars to clean at my own house. At home, I'm surprised to behold my adult son, around whom a confusing and smoky cloud of alcohol and anger drifts, and I stiffen in his presence. But lo, he's eager to help, lifts the bag from my arms like a baby. He twists tops off jars that my hands can't manage. He shakes red globs of ketchup into the sink. We hover over the cauldron of a garbage disposal, whirling yellow chutney and fish sauce, rancid salad oil and green peaches, and pinch our noses against the smell, laugh and look outside where the lightest snow has begun to fall. From a reflection in the window I behold, side by side, our shoulders touching, 2 animals yoked together. And then I move from those books to the book I'm working on right now called Belongings, and I'm going to read 2 poems from that and then close. It's been a rainy period of time, so I picked this poem because of the rain. It's called When the Rain Comes. It's during the morose time I've had before the political landscape changed, so it's a little glum. When the rain comes, the roof lets it descend, whether in hard bursts or gentle. Strokes that wet the temples of pine where sparrows bide. You can't give it an ultimatum. It arrives inevitably as night with its long thoughts. In the age of our failures, we parents whose legacy seems to be adages and antique furniture, an effort to stop wars, our children eye the future like marksmen. At the table, they look at anything but us. In a time of change, and when isn't it, you make slow broth and recall practice required to play Clair de Lune. You have stood too long. Sit down. Rain, wash the little faces of red berries hardened after the crabapple blooms. Melancholy moves like a weather front that will not stay forever. And then I'm going to end with a poem called A Garden of Her Own, dedicated to a friend of mine who's here tonight. And Jim Moore wrote an introduction to the book that's going to be out this fall, and he said, pointed out this poem and said he thinks that the lines kind of being your best self is something that just doesn't apply to this poem, but applies to us all trying to be our best selves. A garden of her own. She is always in bloom. Whatever task she takes on, whatever age she becomes, I call her a flower girl because I think of her in a garden of her own making, like the garden where youth turns wise and healthy, or a kitchen garden where the best food seems to sprout like magic beans into deliciousness. She goes down on her knees in the rich loam of living. Friends and family and work, travel, photos, books, birds, dogs, she honors it all. We know her steadiness and her delights, how appealing she is in her greening growth. What she touches becomes more fruitful, more tasty, beautiful. It becomes whatever it was meant to be. It was meant to be. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Margaret Hasse. And one more round of applause for all tonight's great readers. Joyce Sutphen, Dylan Lauren, Brian Sutphen, Margaret Hasse. Next month, September 12th, Marg Walker welcomes Marcia Peck, Dougie Padilla, Mona Susan Power, and Tish Jones. So hope to see you then. Thank you for coming. We have books for sale. We'll be at Sweeney's, usually the back room. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.